Welcome to Alaska Weather, a production of Alaska Public Media and the National Weather Service, Alaska Region. Produced and broadcast daily from the studios of KAKM, Alaska Weather provides complete forecasts, public, marine, and aviation for all of Alaska. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
It's never too early to set expectations and goals for your child's education. The UA College Savings Plan provides opportunities that can help you reach your educational savings goals. Save in Alaska. Study anywhere. There is more information available by calling 1-888, the number 4, and then Alaska. This message sponsored by the UA College Savings Plan.
The National Weather Service.
Good Wednesday, everyone. I'm meteorologist Dave Snider with the National Weather Service. It's the 26th of March. As always, we encourage you to stay up to date with the latest weather information in your village and community by going to weather.gov/Alaska, arh.noaa.gov. That'll get you to the same place, or by going to weather.gov and clicking on the map that shows Alaska. That'll take you to your nearest Weather Service office serving your community and village. Give us a call at the Weather Info line at 800-472-0391. And as you're doing that and punching in the numbers on your phone to get the forecast and information you want, write those down so next time you can do that a little bit faster. It speeds up the process a little bit, and you can use that again and again. Find the Weather Service offices in Alaska and around the country on Twitter, NWS Anchorage, NWS Fairbanks, and NWS Juneau will get you there around Alaska. U.S. National Weather Service Alaska on Facebook and on YouTube. Of course, during the afternoon, you get your daily afternoon map briefing from the NWS Anchorage channel. And following this broadcast from alaskapublic.org, you will get the YouTube broadcast of this entire broadcast that you're watching right now. It's on the right-hand side of their webpage. If you go down there and scroll down a little bit, you'll see the player there, or simply go back to YouTube and search for AKWX TV, Alaska Weather TV for short, and you'll find the broadcast there. Tomorrow, 10:15. Chill. It's a drill. A statewide test of the Tsunami Warning Center will be offered, and you may hear some alerts on your radio from the EAS system. You may see a crawl on the bottom of your screen, and you may get a warning on your NOAA weather radio. And there could be other ways that you are alerted as well. That will happen tomorrow around 10:15. Just remember, it's a drill. We are making sure that all the bells and whistles work around the entire state and communities affected by tsunamis. Just to make sure that we don't have any problems with the system. And you are part of that system. We'd like to know, did it work? And if you go to the webpage, there is a way for you to submit the feedback on that. And then at 1:36 p.m., the Great Alaska Shakeout, the largest earthquake drill in the country, taking place at 1:36. It's not 5:36, the anniversary time of the 50-year commemoration of the Great Quake there back in 1964. It will be at 1:36, so more people can participate and not headed home on the road there. So again, just remember, it's a drill tomorrow, and it's always better to be prepared. And remember your earthquake preparedness and your safety tips to drop, cover, and hold on if you want to participate in the shakeout. Great idea for your church, home, school, and business to remember your earthquake preparedness there at any time. So that, again, when the event does happen again, that you know what to do and you've rehearsed what to do so you don't have any stumbling blocks along the way. Here's a look at the Bering Sea and the North Pacific now. Boy, a whole lot of nothing going on across the mainland. So this is where all the action is right now. It's all lining up from eastern Asia. We've got several waves of low pressure across the Aleutians, and as they travel eastward, they get weaker and weaker as they move toward the Gulf. The main activity right now really seems to be working its way up across the western Bering. We've got this low here working across south and western parts of the chain, and as it does so, it's stretching a frontal boundary out along that furthest edge away from high pressure across the northern Yukon. So this is kind of running up against a wall of very stable air, and as that boundary stretches out here from the western Bering Sea all the way into the North Pacific, we're going to have a little bit more of a steadier flow working in from the south and southwest across the central and western Aleutians, bringing an opportunity for rain and maybe some mixed precipitation there from time to time. You can see one of those disturbances has made its way into the central Bering. You can see that comma-shaped cloud here north and west of the Pribilovs approaching the St. Matthew Island waters here. As that works its way north and east, it slowly falls apart and merges into the broader cloud deck that's across the west. All these clouds here just kind of stretching out across the far western coast, really not amounting to a whole lot. We've seen maybe some fog and perhaps a passing snow shower. There is an opportunity for some of this to make its way to Nome later tonight, bringing the opportunity for snow showers there. Across the interior, nothing but severe clear sky, and you can see that breaking up as the air is warming up now, and the satellite picture is saying, oh, okay, that's actually a clear sky. We've had some low clouds here across the southern parts of the Kenai, into the Barren Islands region, and also across southeastern Alaska. There's a chance for some snow showers to approach Sitka in the coming days, but most areas have remained nothing but dry. Here's a look at the weather map now, and our low pressure system out across the western Bering at 990 millibars, warmer air racing northward, but again we've got this wall of very stable air here, and no low pressure system right now shall pass, kind of like Gandalf. None shall pass out there across the west. Here's some snow showers across the Alaska Peninsula. Yeah, I just did that, didn't I? And low pressure working its way from east to west across south central there. And a little bit of cloud cover forming on the front edge of those. You can see that again across the Kenai Peninsula, and some cumulus clouds working their way into the central Pacific. And there's a little bit of cloud cover also working its way across coastal areas of southeast, not so much in the interior. And again, a little bit of a breezy day, not as bad as yesterday. No high wind warnings out for you. As we get into tonight, a few snow showers may form closer to Sitka than anywhere else. Rain and snow showers mainly outside of the Dixon entrance. Otherwise, it looks pretty dry across southeast tonight. Low pressure still across the southern Gulf at 991 millibars. This storm really hasn't seemed to go anywhere in the last couple of days. And then we get out to the west, remembering once again, here's our ridge and our stable boundary sitting right across the west coast, and 987 millibar low. The wind's picking up a little bit across the central and western chain. A few more areas of rain showers for Adak, then Atka and points eastward. It's still pretty dry. Might be some pockets of fog there on the north side of the peninsula all the way up to Nunivak Island and north of the Bering Strait. And Nome again looking at a chance of snow showers. Otherwise, high pressure and clear and still across a large part of the interior. So once again, you check the sky for the aurora. There might be another opportunity to see that tonight. Thursday's forecast shows weak area of low pressure there around Arctic Village and Anaktuvik Pass at 1,015 millibars. Really not much to write home about, except that it's connected to a trough of low pressure sitting across south central and the Kenai. All the way out across southeast, a few more clouds for you tomorrow. Another wave of low pressure working from east to west across your region. That will probably spark a few more areas of rain across coastal areas, mainly offshore. It doesn't look like most of that's going to reach anywhere onshore. Out to the west, warmer air is building in, nudging right up against the YK Delta, again bringing an opportunity for some light snow to some very isolated locations across the west coast. It doesn't look like it's going to amount to much. The main core of low pressure is still well to the west. The triple point is one of the more active areas of this storm system. That is a little bit closer to Russia than anywhere else. And across the central part of the chain, rain as a south and westerly flow. Behind that, a little bit cooler there for places like Shemya and Adak as rain begins to mix in with a better chance of snow. By Friday, well, this is a little bit different. The frontal boundary doesn't normally stretch out this long. The only reason that's happening is because we have this stable ridge in place. It is just putting the big parking brake on the storm moving any further. So the next step would be for Saturday is to start to see this frontal boundary either completely disappear or likely fall apart fairly quickly as we get into Friday night and into Saturday. Along that leading edge, we have some pockets of fog with stable air in place, a trough of low pressure across south central and the front. Instead of moving northward into the ridge of high pressure, has to go on the south side, so it's working its way up from the south and east now. And you can see the front trying to make its way up toward Haida Gwaii, offering some rain and snow there. A few more clouds for southern parts of southeast, but all in all, still a pretty dry pattern for just about every corner of the state, with high pressure sitting right on top of Barrow at 1,019 millibars. Temperatures today, well, you can see the change with dry weather and more sunshine every day. Temperatures are going up and away. Upper 30s and lower 40s across southeast. Juneau today, lower 40s. About the same for Sitka, Ketchikan, and Annette. Places closer to Hyder made it up to 45. Around south central, we saw 30s and 40s. Valdez, 38. Homer and Seward, both in the lower 40s. Kenai, just shy of 40 degrees. Anchorage, about 39. Talkeetna, 42. Glen Allen was at 31. Northway saw temperatures in the upper 20s, while Fairbanks was at 41. Healy, about 35. Eagle was closer to the freezing point today, with Tanana looking at temperatures in the lower 30s. Further north, Fort Yukon, 30 degrees. Old Crow is 16. Arctic Village, 19. The Anaktuvuk Pass region in the lower 20s. Ambler and Bettles both in the 30s today. The Arctic coast in the single digits from Barrow and Wainwright eastward. It looked like, well, Wainwright actually was about 10 degrees, I should say. 28 around Point Hope, and it looks like most of Kotzebue Sound was in the 20s. One exception would be Shishmaref. Tin City closer to 21. Nome was 25. St. Lawrence Island 28. Unalakleet was around 16 degrees with Amonic about 26. McGrath was above the freezing point today. Galena at 31. It looked like Bethel was holding in the upper 20s, with Bristol Bay temperatures hitting the 30-degree mark. The Alaska Peninsula mainly in the low to mid-30s, with Kodiak Island anywhere from 40 to 43 by late afternoon. Upper 30s for the Pribilofs, 42 around Unalaska and Dutch Harbor, and close to 40 degrees for the central and western part of the chain. Overnight low temperatures are expected to hold close to freezing for the chain and the peninsula. 31 in Kodiak Island, southwest, teens and 20s, 13 in Nome, 2 in Shishmaref, 7 below in Barrow. It looks like Fort Yukon and Fairbanks probably from 5 below to 5 above. Northway and Eagle will be a little bit colder than that. Teens and 20s for south central and southeast, looking at teens, 20s, and low 30s there if you're out around Sitka and perhaps the southern part of the archipelago. For high temperatures tomorrow, milder still for the interior, mid to upper 30s, closer to 40 in some parts of south central, 38 in Anchorage, 40 in Seward, about the same there in Kodiak, upper 30s for the Alaska Peninsula, closer to 40 for Adak and Atka, Nome near 29. 4 degrees above zero for Barrow. Fairbanks looking at temps in the upper 30s and southeast, upper 30s to lower 40s for your Thursday. Flying weather continues under severe clear for most of the interior. Pockets of IFR across the western Bering, the central part of the Aleutians, and some MVFR expected for parts of southeast. Anaktuvuk and Adigan Pass, of course, will be VFR. All of the Alaska range should be severe clear all the way around and very little turbulence to speak of. Windy Pass we expect to be VFR. Isabel Pass should be visual. Same goes for Tanita Pass and Portage Pass. Things should be clear sailing there. Chilkoot and White Pass also expected to be VFR, and when you look at the freezing levels, really not much change from yesterday at all. The surface freezing line wrapping around the Gulf and nudging just north of the Pribilofs. There was some elevated temperatures that are above freezing, around 2,000 feet around the Pribilofs, and you can see that storm across the central and southeastern parts of the Gulf, pushing a little bit of warm air northward into the Gulf between 2,000 and 4,000 feet to find those freezing levels there, and still have our warmth across the Arctic coast as well. Icing potential shows a very thin line of icing potential along that frontal boundary and storm that's trying to work its way into the stable air and very dry air across Alaska. So anywhere from below 4,000 feet around the Gulf of Anadyr to the central Aleutians, where you have to climb above 2,000 feet, but limited to below 9,000 feet. And then, of course, we have some light icing potential, mainly around the leading edge of that storm across the southern Gulf. So you have to get well away from most areas in Alaska to find any sizable risk of icing tomorrow. The jet stream shows our pattern is locked in place with high pressure ridging well into the Arctic Ocean and then dropping quickly down into the Northwest Territories, where it picks up a lot of speed. The main storm track is well south of Alaska, though, and this is it. It stretches all the way from eastern Asia at 120 knots to about 95 knots across the southern parts of the Gulf, and then zips right into the Pacific Northwest and West Coast with more active weather there. Wind speeds around 75 to 95 knots, and the storm track you see here across the western Bering, that's what's keeping a lot of those storms out across and away from Alaska. Until this shifts and pivots a little bit, we don't have much of a chance of seeing a whole lot of active weather in the mainland. 9,000 feet, high pressure sitting north and west of Prudhoe Bay and Kaktovik. That is allowing northerly winds to kind of bypass Alaska, keeping the really cold stuff away from us at this level. Low pressure circulating some winds in parallel up from southeast. We've got our ridge of high pressure here working to keep away the storms in the west, and again a little bit of a speed issue playing out here across the central Aleutians. As the winds kind of come together, they're going to speed up across the central chain, and that's about where you find some of the fastest winds, between 30 and 40 knots, and on the east side here up to 45 knots as they cross over the Alaska Peninsula around Bristol Bay. At 3,000 feet, you'll notice a similar pattern. High pressure still in charge of the west coast. Winds are a little bit faster here south and west of Adak. High pressure is also slowing the winds down across the interior, anywhere from 10 to 15 knots at most north of the Alaska Range. Along the Alaska Range and south, the wind speeds generally around 15 to 25 knots. Light winds across southeast and coming out of the Yukon. And winds pick up again as they dive southward into the Pacific after they leave areas west of Kodiak and over Bristol Bay, up to 40 knots there. Turbulence potential. I wouldn't be surprised to run into more low-level wind shear across southeast tomorrow. It's not as windy as it has been, but of course there still could be some gap winds there along the inner waterways. Low-level wind shear mainly south of the Alaska Peninsula as the air is coming up and over some of the higher terrain there. The main issue, if there are any main issues, will probably be along the storm system out in the west, below 6,000 feet in the north and south of the Gulf of Anadyr, and also across the central Aleutians below 4,000 feet for any occasional or moderate threat there. Otherwise, any turbulence or icing potential around most of Alaska tomorrow is severely limited, so enjoy your flight wherever it may take you. That's a look at your aviation forecast. We'll be back with your marine weather here in just a few minutes.
We've just driven through 10 months of winter. The daylight's coming back, it's warming up. Everybody's got a little bit of cabin fever. And what do we throw in front of them? 18 hours of daylight, a pair of skis, and some fun activities.
Nana Nordic is the story of what happens when cross-country skiers from all over, Olympians, World Cup racers, university and high school coaches, share their sport with remote Alaska.
In 2011, I finished my season and I had 2 days to pack up for the trip. And to be honest, I didn't know what I was really getting myself into.
After the ski program left last year, the kids wanted to continue skiing and they missed not having that activity.
300 pairs of boots, poles, and skis were sent to the far north, above the Arctic Circle, to Kotzebue and the 10 surrounding villages. Located in northwest Alaska, the Inupiaq have lived in what is called the Nana region for more than 10,000 years. Transportation is by snow machine and airplane. Nordic skiing has not been a part of this northern culture, but that is changing. Despite their remoteness, the Nana region villages are busy with the activity of daily life. And for children, school.
Good morning, Kotzebue School. The temperature outside today is 14 below zero. Today, Nana Nordic will be visiting all the gym classes. Now on to your morning announcements.
The month of April, with 18 hours of sunlight, is perfect for cross-country skiing. Volunteer coaches taught the students a new way to enjoy the world just outside their door.
The volunteers come from all sorts of backgrounds. We have recreational skiers, we have competitive skiers, and we also have Olympians.
Good afternoon. We just flew in from Anchorage and we're here. It's really awesome to see them take up something new that may be challenging at first and just to succeed at it, and they have a lot of fun together, and it's something that's real positive and it's really healthy for them.
Our kids are really active and they enjoy being active. They would much rather do that than sit at home playing video games if there's somebody offering it.
Skiing feels kind of like swimming because you could feel the smooth air going across your face.
The students spent 5 days learning to ski, during school and after school. The emphasis was on fun and exploring the land.
kids respond really well to skiing. I mean, a lot of them are maybe a little timid, a little afraid at the start. They learn that they're capable of doing these things that they didn't think they were capable of doing before.
You go right, left, and you can go as fast as you can, as slow as you can, and you could take your time.
We would like to have skiing as a school activity. It would be great to have a ski club up here, and we love to ski, and hopefully the communities enjoy skiing as well.
40 coaches, 1,500 students, 100 adults, 440 hours of coaching. Nana Nordic's goal is simple: introduce students and communities to cross-country skiing, a fitting sport for the place they call home and the world beyond.
As you would expect, with the continued milder weather pattern for many in the interior and southwest, the ice edge continues to recede with no major weather pattern to help it move south or north at this point. As you look out towards southwestern Alaska, you can see some open areas of water. We're still looking at the ice edge that's generally north of St. Paul. It's still surrounding Nunivak Island. And if you look in the Cook Inlet there's certainly some open areas of water here in the northern parts of the Cook Inlet, where we're still dealing with some higher concentrations of ice, a little bit north of Kenai, but still south and west of Hope. So plenty of ice to be had, but it is receding at this point. For the very latest weather information and ice information, you can always go to weather.gov/anchorage/ice.php to download the information that you need to make a map similar to this. Here's a look at the weather information now for southeastern Alaska for the marine areas. As you look at the Lynn Canal, that's where the strongest winds will be tomorrow and probably the next day. Northerlies around 30 knots with higher gusts there heading into Frederick Sound and Stevens Passage. The winds there will be around 20 knots, but again, higher gusts could be expected anywhere from the central and northern parts of the interior waterways. 4 to 6 foot seas in the north, 4 foot seas in the south, and an offshore flow from 15 to 20 knots. Anywhere from 4 to 6 foot seas should be expected there on Thursday. That switches a little bit to more of a north and northeasterly flow along coastal areas from 4 to 7 feet for the seas. Northerlies continue in the Lynn Canal, 25 knots for the central and southern inner waterways with 5 foot seas expected there on Friday. For South Central, very light and even variable winds inside and outside of Prince William Sound down towards Seward and Homer. The winds will pick up a little bit more coming across the Barren Islands and off the mountains. Northwesterlies around 20 knots with 4 to 5 foot seas there. North and northeasterly winds coming down Cook Inlet and over Kodiak Island. Expect 15 knot winds with 3 foot seas inside of Shelikof Strait. Even more variable and lighter winds as we get into Friday. 10 knot winds at best around Prince William Sound and most of the western Gulf. The wind speeds continue around 10 to 15 knots around Cook Inlet and west of the Barren Islands, about 15 knots with a 4 foot sea on Friday. Across the Alaska Peninsula, north and westerly flow will continue around 15 knots on the Bering side. On the Pacific side, 20 to 25 knots. 6 foot seas are expected as we get into Thursday with only 2 foot seas inside of Bristol Bay. And once we get into Friday, variable winds there and very light winds. A 1 foot sea almost flat, in fact, for the Bristol Bay. Southeasterly flow on the Bering side north of Cold Bay, 5 foot seas there. Northwesterlies south of Kodiak Island and more of a southerly flow coming into places like Sand Point with a 5 foot sea. For the Aleutians, a west and southwesterly flow from Kiska out toward Attu at 25 to 35 knots. You'll see the strongest winds there from Kiska all the way out toward Atka. 30 to 35 knot winds with a southwesterly flow south of Unalaska and Dutch Harbor at 20 knots, a 6-foot sea on the Pacific side. And that becomes 9 feet as we get into Friday with more of a broad westerly flow sweeping across the frontal boundary, parked right about here by the end of the week. Still looking at a southwesterly flow north of Unalaska with a 7-foot sea and 9, 10, even 11-foot seas out across the central and western part of the chain as we wrap up the week. For the west coast, look for a south and southeasterly wind coming into St. Lawrence Island and over Nunivak Island. Westerlies coming onshore around Kuskokwim Bay with a 2-foot sea there. Southerlies around the Pribilofs with a 20-knot flow and an 8-foot sea. Southeasterlies will diminish somewhat around the St. Matthew Island waters from 30 knots to 25 knots on Friday. Southeasterlies around the St. Lawrence Island area around 25 knots, and an offshore wind develops around the Kuskokwim Bay. Still looking at a very flat sea there on Friday. Across the north slope, east and southeasterly winds from Kaktovik to Barrow, 15 to 20 knots, with more of a southerly flow coming into the Chukchi from the Bering Strait, 10 to 15 knot winds expected there Thursday. A little bit more of an offshore flow on Friday. Winds still running around 10 to 15 knots on Friday, with an onshore flow from the north and west from Barrow to Prudhoe Bay and Dead Horse and Kaktovik, again from the west and northwest around 10 knots. Recapping tonight's weather, high pressure is still in charge of most of the mainland, and that is keeping most of the very active weather well out to sea. Now, a cold front is sweeping across the central chain. That will stir up the winds, probably to gale strength in some cases across the central and western part of the Aleutians. A storm is sitting across the southern part of the Bering, or southern part of the Gulf, I should say, with a little bit of moisture closing in on the coast of southeast Sitka. May see a snow shower, and there's an opportunity for some light snow around Nome tomorrow, but most of the interior will be dry. Plenty of sunshine. A few clouds will pass over Kodiak and south central. Southwestern Alaska could flirt with a flurry. A cold front sweeping across the central chain will move a little bit closer to Unalaska and Dutch Harbor, and the winds will switch around as we head into Friday, becoming a little more westerly with time. The coldest air stays well to the north. The strongest winds stay away from Alaska as high pressure stabilizing the storm system and trying to chip away at its leading colder edge there as it moves closer to the western coast. For southeast, a storm coming up from the Pacific Northwest and kind of lingering across the southern Gulf will send a frontal boundary a little bit closer to the Dixon entrance, and rain and snow showers may creep in on Ketchikan and Annette by the end of the week. Thanks for watching Alaska Weather. Have a good night.
These forecasts are to be used for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
The National Weather Service.
Cook Inlet Tug and Barge is a marine transportation company specializing in harbor services with a primary marketing focus on the Port of Anchorage, providing their customers with quality-based service specifically tailored to their needs.
Alyeska Pipeline Service Company, Alaska's pipeline to the future, delivering oil today, sustaining operations for tomorrow, committed to safety, operating the 800-mile Trans-Alaska Pipeline since 1977.